Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for attending today's session of Let's Lock It Down. My name is Alex Cooley, and I'm here with Chris Nyhuis from Vigilant today, and we welcome you all to this event. So Chris, give us a little intro and a little background on yourself.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Chris Nyhuis. I'm the CEO of Vigilant. We are headquartered here in Cincinnati, but we support organizations globally. My background previous to Vigilant was in the automotive industry. I was a CISO there protecting automotive and finance data. And then previous to that, I was in basically food control and food distribution, protecting ammonia control systems and just the environments that store our food.
Fantastic. Yeah. Awesome. So we have a great panel set up for you guys today. Just to start with some further information, our next Let's Lock It Down webinar will be on March 28th, 2024. So be sure to tune in for that. We will have a post-webinar survey coming out with a recording of this event, as well as some information for the next one. All right, so for those of you who are joining us today that don't know anything about ATC, we wanted to give you a little bit of insight into what we do and who we are. So ATC, we are an independent IT consulting company, and we focus in 4 core areas. That's voice, cloud, network, and cybersecurity. One value proposition that we do have that we bring to our clients is we provide a provider neutral and a solution agnostic approach. And we do that via access of our technology marketplace with over 600 providers, which Vigilant happens to be one of them. And jumping into today's topics, we are going to talk about cybersecurity trends in 2024. So we wanted to start off the year on the right note and talk about CISO trends, where we're seeing attacks happening currently and then into the future, as well as AI and security. With that, let's start with CISO trends. So Chris, we've talked about this a lot offline and just a little bit gearing up for this presentation. But one interesting thing that we've seen recently is the heightened regulations around the CISO. For instance, last year, the SolarWinds CISO actually had some things come down from the SEC. So talk a little bit more about what you're seeing as far as the role of the CISO and what some different things are happening for them in 2024.
Yeah, I would say I don't envy the CISOs in today's environment. Like I said, I was a CISO previously before Vigilant. One of the reasons why I got in this industry is as a consumer, I was really frustrated because we spent a significant amount of money in investment on cybersecurity technology, on all of the things that the industry tells you to do. And what I found is, and like I said earlier, we protected a lot of automotive industry information, so highly attackable industry. And what I found is that the technology we were using didn't quite work. And in most cases, they didn't even detect the threats that were in our environments. Our team did eventually, or the threat revealed themselves. And what's really scary is that's still true today, 15 years ago. I mean, most of the industry, when they detect the threat, it's usually 247 days past the time that the attacker started doing something. But even on top of that, there's little to no forensic data. And so the industry's continued to do that thing. And so as a CISO, I was frustrated, jumped to the industry, created a company to solve that problem. And we have. But a lot of companies out there do not have the forensic data continuously in their environment to prove whether or not something happened or they didn't. And where a CISO is in the world now is their whole job is around compliance or proving whether things did or didn't happen, or making decisions that literally can determine whether or not the organization goes out of business or not based on a cyber threat. So there's a lot of pressure there. Their jobs aren't that easy. There's an 18-month tenure now. CISOs are jumping into roles and getting out of them fast, or they're being moved on because of an incident. And all this weight and this pressure from, in what I would say in a lot of cases is sometimes an unsolvable problem for them to fix is on their shoulders. And now, we're now starting to see where CISOs are now being held liable personally, right. And even to the point of being threatened with jail time, and even some going to jail time based on those decisions. And at the end of the day, just like me as a CISO, you don't really have the authority to make those changes in your organization, but you're the one responsible for when they don't work.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the data-driven decisions there and just having access to that forensic data. How do you see CISOs leveraging that data in a positive way this year and into the future?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is you have to start demanding it from your security providers. Most of cybersecurity in today's world operates from what we call very low trust data sets. Look at what most companies deploy. They deploy logs first, right? Why do they do that? Well, they do that because the cyber industry tells you to from a compliance standpoint. But if you look at all of the organizations that have had breaches, over the last even 10 years, it's very rare that they even had information in their logs that told them anything about the threat in the first place, or even gave them forensic data on the back end. And I would say, as a challenge to the industry is that one of the reasons that's happened is because it's a lot less expensive for security companies to become just aggregators of your logs, right? You buy your own technology, you buy your own equipment, you buy your own software, and then a security provider is just warehousing it, and they're doing some alerting on it. Why that fails is because the first place a threat actor manipulates when they come into an environment is the logs. And so you have to look at logs as a low trust data set, and you have to work with organizations or demand that your security provider presents and actually interacts with you, not from an event level, which is where, it's great to get reports on events, makes you feel good or maybe not, but you really have to understand what's happening below that from a forensic level, because the forensics is what helps you make decisions, right? The event is too late, right? The event is well past the incident happening. And if you're making decisions there, just like we said earlier, it's 247 days on average that attacks are detected. And you might have a security provider that tells you that they'll detect in 15 minutes, but they're really telling you from the 247th day, right? And so you can hold them accountable to get closer to that. Like our vigilance at 4 hours, but we'll forensically show you why that is. And then you can make really good decisions with that information. You can stay ahead of the attacks and you can solve for that issue.
Okay. How is that building into kind of learning your own defensive plays against threat actors and kind of going down that path of protecting your organization?
Yeah, I mean, security is not a set and forget thing. It's not hey, we put this technology in and we're good. People used to say, no one ever got fired for buying Cisco, if you've ever heard that term. But that mindset is hey, we put it in and we're all set. And the moment you put tech in, it may have been good at that moment, but it has to evolve on a daily basis. And that's why, being involved in almost on a daily stand-up, like what are we doing today? What did we learn the day before? You either need to do that with your internal team or you need to do that with your external teams, or at least have monthly stand-ups where you're really looking at, well, how does security have to evolve now for me? Because threat actors are really good at understanding what the industry does. MITRE framework. Everyone knows what that is. Every threat actor knows exactly what it is. Intel. If you have Intel in your firewalls, or you have Intel in your endpoints, the threat actors have access to that same Intel, right? So they know all the tools that most companies use, and they know the things that they can do, and they know how to get around it. So that's why, as a CISO, your job has to evolve from less focus on compliance. Because if you do security well, you'll be compliant. And be more focused on cyber-focused resilience, right? And that means daily involvement in the actual data. What is it telling me? And what do I need to do in the warfare mind, in a warfare landscape?
Absolutely, yeah. And I like your topic there that you talked about where the attacks are happening. If you're having a specific type of technology, you need to defend yourself against that, or at least use your data to make sure that that's not going to happen in the future. And I think that kind of bleeds really well into where the attacks are happening currently that we know about, and then also where attacks will be happening in the future. So let's talk about that a little bit
Yeah. Did you want to talk about the SEC, the SolarWinds thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you want to jump into the SolarWinds,
that's interesting.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and I think this is the last thing right here is we'll briefly hit it, but with the SEC just charged SolarWinds with their chief information security officer with fraud, and because of internal control failures, it happened to Uber as well. John Sullivan, he for the last 6 years since their breach has been defending himself to basically try to stay out of jail. And what's interesting about that, again, is the CISO rarely has control in the organization of what they do. They rarely have control of the budget. They rarely have control of the direction. They're more of in a lot of cases, they get to suggest, right? And then a board or someone else makes those final decisions. We were just speaking to an organization yesterday. I don't know if I said tomorrow, but they're in the defense world and they're just getting into defense contracts, and their IT staff knows what they need to do to get these defense contracts. And even if you're compliant, you have one breach, you lose your contracts. Their CFO approached it in a low cost model and is going after a very low cost cybersecurity solution, but it won't actually get them where they need to go. So they're going to lose way more money than they would because they can't actually grow their organization. So where it comes into play with these CISOs being faced with jail time, one of the things John Sullivan said, in his arraignment, because they were going to charge him, and he actually got off with probation and everything else, but the judge said, "Hey, we believe you did everything with the best intentions. However, where you failed is, you didn't have a third party there that was validating what you were doing on a daily basis." And so one of the things that John Sullivan says now is, hey, even if I have my own team, I have to have a third party to validate because they're a secondary entity. And so that's one of the things I would really challenge CISOs with is, build, if you want to build your teams, right? But what people realize is, Uber is a transportation company. They're not a cyber company, and so they're not going to get the funding to develop technology the way that Uber needs it. And they're not going to get the validation there. And so you want to, follow his advice, make sure you're working with a third party that's constantly working with your team and doing validation, because that way it covers you, right? In all aspects, you definitely want to cover your organization, but as a CISO, you got to make sure that you cover you as well.
Absolutely. It's about making those true partnerships. And if you don't have that true partnership in place, then you're going to be on the hot seat.
Exactly.
Especially what we've seen kind of in the news recently.
Yeah. One thing we did is we developed a shared risk policy. So all of our clients, if they have a breach, we cover all the forensic costs.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so it's work with providers to do that.
Great. Yeah, so if we dive back into kind of where those attacks are happening, obviously what we've seen, we know that attacks are happening within the network, on the endpoint, email especially. There was a statistic that it was 65% of attacks that were happening to US-based companies in 2020 were based off of phishing. So we already know that those things are happening and we need to defend against those. But what are some trends that you're seeing within your own client base, or where do you predict kind of those attacks happening in the future?
Yeah, what's interesting is threat actors haven't changed, right? They go after the least path of resistance. And, a lot of organizations are moving their data to the cloud. They're moving in seemingly attempting to move risk, away from their environments. What's actually happened is it's created more risk. And the reason that's taken place is because organizations have, by moving that risk out, they've reduced their security footprint, or their detection footprint, or their offensive footprint inside their environments, because they've pushed those things out. And a lot of times they say, well, I push things to the cloud, so they have to worry about my cybersecurity now. The thing about that one is that you're the one that decided to put it there. So if it gets breached there, you're still responsible. And that's a really big thing to be aware of. But the second thing is that when you look at where threat actors are going, they're still going after the user, just like you said, right? With phishing. And so what the industry's worked at is trying to do a lot of security awareness training, and that works. That is a good thing. However, if you look at the rise in phishing, it's almost exactly correlated with the rise in security awareness training. Right. And that's because you have very, very intelligent threat actors that are attacking organizations. They're attacking people. And if it was, if they're attacking your CFO and it was an accounting bake-off, your CFO is going to win. But no matter how much security awareness training you're going to give to anyone in your organization, if they're not in the security teams, they're probably not going to fare very well in the long run. And so you really need to make sure you're still putting protection on your users, around your users, and within your corporate environments. If you've moved it out, you got to bring it back, and that's a big thing. The cloud should be looked at as a business expander, as a hyperscaler. It shouldn't be looked at as a risk handler.
Right. And I read something as well about SaaS-based applications and just the security policies around that. It kind of bled back into the SEC also regulating those applications as well. And I mean, those are just such an easy target point now that kind of the SaaS sprawl is happening, that it's just another place for threat actors to come in.
Yeah, the SEC is not messing around. Right. They're going to make sure that people do not trade things in their organization for better security.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think that, and we'll get into this a little bit further, but just from an attack and threat actor standpoint, with AI playing, a even bigger scale into cybersecurity nowadays, what do you think kind of just the automation things behind the scenes are threat actors doing to get into individuals' environments?
Yes, I mean, the AI thing is really interesting. One thing we've seen a lot, because we do incident response as well for organizations that are, that come to us new. But AI is being used as a pretty impressive attack tool. Like I said earlier, log manipulation. They're deploying AI onto an endpoint that they've taken over, so they can manipulate how your logging systems actually react to the activity they're doing. Another way is we've seen threat actors spin up thousands of servers up in Amazon, deploy endpoint software to it, whether it's any type of antivirus that's out there, and then they actually send information to it to train that technology to not detect them. And then they keep testing it until it doesn't detect their attack. And then they go do their attack, right? And then again, it takes 247 days for software to catch up. So when attackers are doing something, that initial attack, it's so curated in a lot of cases to even the small business or even the mid-market, because they can make millions of dollars off of one attack. So they're not really doing this blanket sprawling attack anymore. They're looking at an organization, and if you have revenue, you're a target, and they're using artificial intelligence to go after you. On the flip side of that, what the defense world has done, again, this is where I get really kind of ticked off at our industry a lot, because they really they trade client value for shareholder value, and so think about that. What does AI do? It's a 10xer. It maximizes your time. That's what everybody's talking about. ChatGPT all over the place, right? And so what a lot of companies are doing is they're using AI in the glamour of it in their cybersecurity marketing, right? And they're replacing their team members and analysts with it, saying that it's a maximizer. But the thing that you have to understand about AI is that, we're still early on in this. And one of the big things about anything in warfare, especially cyber, is time. And AI can take 60 to 80 days in your environment to learn about what's going on. And it doesn't mean that it automatically just creates a baseline forever. It's every day that goes by, it takes another 60 to 80 days to learn about that day. Right. So you have to realize that if you're only using artificial intelligence in your detection systems and you're never allowing it to interact with humans, where humans can actually make some decisions around that data, or you're a CISO that's just invested all your stuff in AI and it's just telling you information, you're going to go down a really bad path, because it can never learn fast enough that the attacker can attack. Because an attacker with AI has time. They know when they're going to attack. They can wait 6 months for it to learn about you. But on the defense side, you don't have that time within that real-time attack, right? So I think we're going to see AI be used dramatically more over the next few years with, as an attack tool. I think you're also going to see it used as a defense tool, but you're going to start to see the amount of attacks and the fidelity or the ability for AI-based systems by themselves to actually defend, just because like your laptop doesn't have enough processing power to process against, process an AI engine against that attack. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a great point that you bring up. I think that when you were speaking to kind of the industry and where we're at with AI, obviously that was probably the buzzword that I felt was from 2023. Yeah. It was AI this, AI that, and not necessarily even related to cybersecurity. It's just on all facets. Yeah. And I think from the standpoint that you talked about defense and different things, I think we're going to be catching up just as far as an industry of, leveraging AI tools, whether that be for your offense or for your defensive play.
Yeah. And tools are great. I mean, you can use AI to write detection, right, for you, or you can use it to write code for you. You can use it to maximize your time, but you don't want to use it in a way that creates hypothetical analysis on things without validating it in another way. Like, we use AI within our systems, but we create trusted data sets forensically that we can do comparative analysis against it and know if the AI is right or not. Right. So
absolutely. I think we're going to pause there. We do have a poll for the folks that are out there. So we're going to go ahead and throw that up. All right. And today's poll is kind of wrapped around that AI conversation that we're having. So by 2030, what is the expected spend for AI-based security products? I'll leave this open for a minute.
Interesting question.
I know, right? We'll see what our attendees think today. All right. So we did get the poll results here. So majority of folks went with 135. So if you are out there and you did guess 135 in that poll, then you would be right. You're right. You're right on the right path for 2030. So this was an interesting statistic that we found just about cybersecurity products, where we have been and where we're headed. So this market was kind of tapped in at about 15 million in 2021. And, everything that we've been talking about kind of validates the direction of where this is going in 2030 with 135 billion. So I think that, it's just going to continue to be a big factor. And I think we should just talk about the intent and the malicious efforts behind AI. So you want to expand upon that?
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said a second ago, closing your skills gap with AI is a good thing, right? Closing your time gap, right? Like I said, in cyber warfare, time matters. So if you can find ways to help AI maximize your time and allow your team to have more focus on what's actually happening in the present, that's a great way to use AI. You just want to make sure you don't replace it. There's a couple companies out there that are now saying, hey, let AI make all your cybersecurity decisions for you. It's virtual CISO AI. Bad idea, right? Because they're not going to have context about your industry, your environment, your organization. They're not going to have context about what's happening right now, or a press release or things like that, right? Now, where from a malicious standpoint, we are seeing a lot of social engineering with it. I mean, it's you can take anyone's. I mean, someone could take this podcast, create bots that look just like you and I within 90 seconds, have it actually take our voice and reuse it and use it against anyone we know, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you're preparing your organization for that. So have some rotating code words, for major decisions. Look at all the CEO scams before. People were sending emails saying, "Hey, send this email out," or send this ACH payment out, and people did it still, even though it was in an email. Well, think about if you just got a phone call from your CEO to say you know their voice, and you would absolutely do that, or a video call, or whatever, right? Or a fake Zoom call, because you could jump on a Zoom with them and they can just hit play. So really understand, like, within the protection of your organization, have some enclaves before actions are taken, and have some rotating code words inside of that a social engineer might not know that exist. And that goes to deep fakes. And then, like I said before, data poisoning. AI is being used in such a great way as an attack tool to really manipulate the very tools you have. And so if you do use if in your cyber platforms, if you do use AI, make sure that you are doing it in a way that curates to you. There's a ton of language models out there that allow that for that to happen. There's different security companies that do. We've built curation for our clients as well. But you don't want to make your detection based off of the aggregate of the rest of the world, because like I said, a lot of attacks are very unique and very curated to every organization they go after, because they can be so successful at it. Right. So that means the attacks or the intel or the detection or anything that you're using to defend against that has to be curated to you. Gone are the days of buying aggregated intel and having it being effective, in your environment.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, buying technology that is, and it's back to the original conversation that we had around the CISO. If you're putting it in a technology that's AI based and you're setting it and forgetting it, well, that's just not enough. You have to leverage. Yeah, it's good, but it's still not enough. Leveraging those tools to kind of fill in those gaps, and then also just enable your teams to really spend their time focusing on whether it's an incident, whether it's logs, whether it's a breach, God forbid. You can use those tools in a better, more effective way.
You got to build a security program.
Absolutely.
The security program isn't just a firewall, isn't just endpoint. It's not just a third party. It's a program, and that program is designed to give you a strategic advantage against a threat.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's been awesome. So I think we covered a ton today. So I know we talked about the CISO trends, where we're seeing attacks happening, and also AI and security. We will be having our ATC Technology Summit later this month on February 29th. We have some amazing keynotes and breakout sessions happening. We have Vigilant and Chris shutting down the show in the afternoon. So if you haven't registered yet, make sure to use the QR code that's on the screen and register. We also will be sending out registration links with today's recording of our webinar. And then I think we also have a little bit to talk about the Forensic Fusion Initiative. If you want to give us the rundown on that.
Yeah, I'll be fast on this one, but fast but thorough. So this is something we're very excited about. In our building, we actually on our 4th floor, we're next door to ATC, and the Cryptic Vector's right next to us. So one thing that came up, we work a lot with the FBI, and I was meeting with one of our local agents back in September, October, and Vigilant does a lot with anti-human trafficking and also orphan care. And one of the things I was talking about, and do some things with them around those lines, and I asked him, how do you guys handle the caseload? And he goes, man, we don't. He said, we have so many cases that by the time we get to them, we're never going to find those people, right? And it's crazy, because with human trafficking, seconds matter, minutes matter, hours matter. And when you have months to go by, that's not good. So I said, well, what if we can get a bunch of people together? And it's not just cyber people. It's Alexis marketing people come, business people come, whoever.
Anyone that's open
to everybody. If we can get people in the same room that all hate human trafficking, and we just work together, could we work with you to maybe train the team, train everybody that comes, and then we'll take those training sessions, and then once a quarter, you bring some cases, and we'll help go work that stuff with you. And it's turned into FFI, which you see on the screen here. We just had our first meeting back in January. ATC, Cryptic Vector, and Vigilant hosted it. We had 100 people sign up, 97 came, which was pretty phenomenal. And it's people from all over the city, all different skill sets. People who just said, hey, I want to take an active role in fighting this. And it was pretty amazing to see what Cincinnati showed up and did. And what's really crazy is people from all over the country that also saw it on LinkedIn have been reaching out saying, hey, can we start this in our area, including FBI agents. So that was pretty fun.
That was going to be my follow-up question. I mean, the outreach seems to be great. So
that's huge.
I'm assuming that this is only going to continue to expand in the future.
Yeah, it's and we're excited to do it with you too. We love your culture and
support it.
It's been fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, if you guys need to register for this as well, make sure to use that code on the screen. And we're going to wrap up today's call with any Q&A that's in the chat. Chris, it's been great having you here. Great conversation, great topics for 2024. All right.